Welcome everyone to the February 2024 meeting of Farmland Preservation. I'm Michael Blank, President, and with me tonight are Dennis Stedman, Vice President, George Hines, Secretary, Dan Bonkoski, Treasurer, and Sean Carney, Member. So we'll jump right into it to George and the approval of the minutes from our January meeting.
Okay, thanks, Mike. The meeting minutes from our January 16th meeting, we've reviewed them, finalized them. They've been shared with the board. And if I could have a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved.
Okay. Our next agenda item is Dan Bonkoski, Treasurer's Report.
So on the Treasurer's Report, one item that we have discussed previously, and it's making some progress, is we are working with an attorney now on doing a document review. I've sent over a number of documents, our bylaws. I'm pretty sure I sent an example of one of our leases as well. Amendments to the bylaws, discussion on investment policy statement, conflict statement, things like that. And I actually have a phone call this Friday with our attorney to hear some of her preliminary thoughts. And just for the minutes, right, we decided that it was a good point in time since to have them reviewed to make sure they're in compliance with, all state laws, requirements, et cetera, on the operations side of our organization.
Okay. And as far as any financial transactions during the month?
We had a couple invoices that we paid that were all previously approved invoices. They were back a little bit ago. We had our invoice for our envelopes and stamps and things like that for mailing out the letters that we're also, I think, discussing in a little bit.
And the sign as well. The house
yeah.
sign.
Yes.
From Shaw Signs. Okay. Any questions for Dan? If not, we'll move on to our next topic, which is community outreach. We have a couple items that happened last month and have been continuing. The first is we sent out our biennial now, it's every other year, a letter to neighbors telling them about the history of farmland preservation, informing them of our expectations for them and what we're all about. And we've had some good results. We had a neighbor who was throwing some of yard waste on our side of the fence, and that was cleaned up by that neighbor. And Leadham, I think there was some results there as well. Sean and I, that's right, went out to see a neighbor who got the letter and was worried that there was a hole in the fence and that some kids in quotes were getting through and disrupting things. And Sean and I went out last Saturday and actually inspected the fence with her. There was no hole and she was satisfied. So that was another good outcome. Anybody else have any contact from neighbors as a result of the letter we sent?
Nope.
Okay.
Mike, it's Sean. I just had to hit on mute. Sorry about that. Maybe it's related to the letter. Maybe it's related more to some of the work that we're doing on the farms, but just received a call today from a neighbor where work is being done behind their home by Corcoran, limbing up the trees. Just, wanted to reach out, saw our letter, knew who we were now, and wanted to kind of discuss the work that was going on behind there, get a little better understanding of it, so on. So I think that was kind of really the only outreach that I've had, but it was, I think, generated by a combination of the letter and the work being done.
Good. So a positive outcome.
Yeah, somewhat positive, yes.
Okay, okay. And then the other thing that we discussed last time, and then we wrote up a summary for of our organization for social media and the LMT newsletter, and got word from the township that they would take care of it. So we expect to see that uh, over time. And then as far as the website, we're not changing anything there. We already have a write-up that Jim Majewski reminded me of. So we're not changing anything there. So look for that in the coming months. Look for those on the newsletter and in social media on Facebook. I don't know, has anybody seen anything on Facebook?
I've seen a few drafts. This is Dan. When we get we usually not too far ahead of time, but when we get the quarterly or seasonal township newsletter,
right?
I'll try and get you over a draft so you can see what they put in there in case you have any edits or comments.
Oh, excellent.
We don't get that much of a window to respond, but I'll keep an eye out for you just in case.
Okay, great. Good deal. Good deal. Okay, I'll turn it over to Sean for the next item that's on Leadham. Bob Calavita requesting an acre to plant more trees.
Yes, so I'm happy to go into whatever level of detail the board would like, but I'll start at 10,000 feet and we'll work our way down. Ultimately, the request is going to be for a transfer of 1 acre from the current lessor, which is Sam and Tim Stewart from Charlotte Farms, over to Bob Calavita in the Christmas Tree Farm. In December, when we had our December meeting, our December gathering, Bob and Bob Jr. And I were having a discussion about the farm, and very educational discussion about how Christmas tree farms in this area have really changed. When they first came to this area, there were 4 farms where families could go and pick out trees and cut them down and have that experience and so on. And fast forward to 2023, and Bob was the only farm where this still existed. And it creates a bit of a supply-demand issue. Bob obviously would like as many people to be able to come to the farm as possible and cut down their Christmas trees and take them home. Unfortunately, they just can't do that. They allow a certain number to be taken from the farm each year. And Bob Jr. had shared with me, as he's getting more involved in it, that ultimately, that their strategy has to change. They either need to shut down the farm, a portion of it anyway, and allow it to grow, or they need to haul in more trees from out of state for people to choose from. But it's becoming less of an experience where people come and cut down their own trees. So, I asked them if there was anything that we could do. And ultimately what they said was, if there's ever any more property that we could plant on, anything at all, it would be a very big deal for us. If we had even an acre, we could plant hundreds of trees, not open the farm, that portion of the farm, for years, and allow them to grow and become more mature. So, given that Bob and Bob Jr. were there and Sam and Tim were there, I floated the idea to Sam and Tim. And I think if nothing else, they at least heard the request that evening, and we just let it go on. Fast forward 2 months, and a month and a half, Dennis and I had our annual sit-down breakfast with the stewards to go over everything from how the crop season went to things that we can do, so on. And one of the topics we discussed was this. And Sam and Tim were more than open to this, especially if it meant that much to Bob, an acre of property. So Tim came out and met with Bob and I back on the property. And we identified what a potential acre could look like. I'm on an iPad. I'm going to try and share with you all what I have here. I'm hoping that you can see it. Let me know if you can. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
Okay. Just back behind, so you can see where the 120 feet starts. The reason that's there is, Tim's ultimate only request is that he has 120 feet of access at all times so that he can bring his sprayer through. So the top of the woods here all the way to the fence line is greater than 120 feet. I just put 120 there. It's actually like 130 some. But what we identified as a potential acre was this triangle, if you will, that extends off of 2 Christmas tree farms that Bob already has trees on. And it's continuous for Tim to continue to, to farm and so on. So this was what we walked and identified. I marked it off with markers. If anybody wants to go back and take a look, I think Mike has seen it. I have seen it. Bob, Sam, and Tim have seen it. If this board agrees to the transfer of an acre from Farmland to Bob Colavita, the plan going forward would be for Sam and Tim to plow this portion of the field where you see an A, and get it ready for Bob to be able to plant come April, where he would put sticks in the ground. And again, this would be a portion of his farm that wouldn't be touched for, he calls it 8, 9, 10 years until he has tall, mature trees that the customers will be able to come and pick from. I have a second variation of that shape, but it's not necessary to show. The ultimate is that neither of them are hung up on, is it exactly an acre? Is it not exactly an acre? It's close by measurement. And if Bob decides to go in a slightly different direction with it, it's no hindrance at all to Tim and Sam. That's not a problem. They've carved this out. It's okay for them. I did contact the conservation folks just to run by them the potential idea. They had no problem with it. They said the Christmas trees are obviously a lot less erosive than the row planting that takes place with crops on an annual basis. Plus, if we're just talking about an acre and acre and a half, there'd be no problem. So the conservation folks are okay with it. Sam, Tim, Bob, all okay with it. So I'm bringing it to the board as kind of, it was a request that came out of a meeting. We've met, we've discussed it. It seems like it's something that all parties are in agreement that it's okay with, if we as a board are also okay with it. So I'll stop there. Again, happy to go into any layer of detail, but I think I've given you all enough background for a discussion.
Yeah, any questions, comments?
It makes a ton of sense. I think it's a good change. The two farmers are cooperative. We should be too. Administratively, we need to have an addendum to the Farmland farm lease, calling out, that change of an acre, and an addendum to the Colavita lease, calling out that addendum or modification. And I know, we as a board wanted to discuss at some level the financial implications of that, but it's not a big swing in any direction. And to me, it's a matter of revising leases so that, we're all buttoned up and accurate on who's responsible for what.
How about putting
I support
it? Yeah, I'm supportive too. Anybody, can we put it in a motion and take a vote on it?
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think, Sean, you were touching on this. I just wanted to, I deal with a lot of easements every day, so I'm always in the nitty-gritty of the wording. This use type, Christmas tree farm use type is allowed, and this is me getting educated on farmland preservation, so bear with me for a second. Christmas tree use is an allowable use under agricultural uses for farmland preservation.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Yep.
Good. And then in terms of where will these trees, when they harvest the trees, it might take them, depending, 7-8 years, depending on the growth rates and whatnot. Are they going to, is it a go cut your own, or do you know how they plan on doing that down the road?
Sure. So the way Bob's farm works is it's called cut your own, but you don't actually get to cut your own. He has hired help there, usually high school and college age folks that meet you there And once you tag your tree or you've come to pick up your tree, they walk out with you, they cut the tree, take it back to the stand where then they wrap it if you want it wrapped to put on your vehicle and help you tie it down and all of those things. So called cut your own, but no, Bob takes care of it.
So how do they, it maybe the map might help. This is the one concern I would have then is sounds great. It's an easy use, but in terms of during peak season, 7-8 years from now, what does it look like? You know, do they have a parking situation? Do they have a place to stage everything so that they're not impeding other residents? That's my only concern. I think it's a great idea. What are the logistics of that?
Absolutely. So Calavita's Christmas Tree Farm now, I mean, we are literally adding on a percentage basis, maybe, I don't know, 5-ish.
14%.
14%. We're adding 14% onto his current tree inventory. Mm-hmm. But, he also brings in a lot of trees from out of state that he puts in his barn for people who are looking for taller trees than 6 foot, which is basically about his max. So he has a full parking situation. None of that I could see being a concern by adding on this 1 acre.
Good. So it's immediately adjacent to his existing operation, so he can use that infrastructure to keep it going.
That's correct. It is approximately 5 paces off of his other Christmas tree farm.
Yeah, so you might get another 300-400 trees out of it. Yeah.
And Dan, from an educational perspective, he already leases from us. So some of his land is already leased from us. So it's just tacking on another acre to the already existing lease.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was picking that up as we were going through. So I appreciate that. So it's really just giving him 300 or 400 trees 7-8 years from now when they get to that size, and he's probably shifting around his property to replace what he did the year before or something like that. Okay. I'm thinking out loud.
Exactly
I appreciate it. Okay.
Yep. I guess, the ask tonight would be, we know that Bob will have, so the plan going forward would be Sam and Tim are going to take care of plowing that portion of the field so that it's plantable for Bob. That's an agreement between the two, but they know not to go forward with anything until they hear from the board. But, Bob obviously has to order sticks to put in the ground and would like to be able to plant in April. So if we're all in agreement that what we have to do is some logistical work, paperwork, but nothing that would hold this up, then what I'd like to do is be able to get to a point where I can contact Tim and Bob and let them know that details are coming forward paperwork wise, but nothing that will hold up you being able to get started on the plowing and planting process.
So to put that in terms of a motion, I'd like to move that the board, ask the board if they would approve that 1 acre be transferred from the current lease on Leadham that the Stewarts run, have to Bob Calavita Christmas Tree Farm, and that we give the go-ahead for the preparation of the soil for that to happen. And following that, or in tandem with that, we change the leases to reflect this transfer. Probably could have said it more concisely, but
I will second that motion or move that motion forward if that's what you want.
yeah.
And if you move the motion, then I'll second the motion.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, done. Good job.
Good.
That's a good outcome.
I also believe that we all should tip our hats to Shoreland Farms. They have that lease through December 31st, 2029. They were under no obligation to forego an acre of that cropland, but supporting their neighbor and fellow farmer, that's what they did, and even willing to do plowing. So that's the kind of spirit that gets things done. So I think tip of the hat to Sam and Tim.
I agree. Thanks, Dennis.
Very good. Good. Well, so we're talking about leases. So the next item is kind of a review of leases and what the time frame we need to do that in. Dennis?
Okay, if you look at our at the separate leases on our parcels, there are two parcels, two leases that will mature or come to an end on December 31st, 2024, and that is the Bridal Estates parcel leased by Doug Wright, as well as the Heather Ridge parcel leased by Tom McGowan. Those are both 5-year leases maturing at the end of this calendar year. Before we talk about those specifically, the leases on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels leased by Shoreland Farms, those were all 10-year leases when we renewed those in 2020, so they expire December 31st, 2029. And the McGowan, let's see, no, wait, that was updated. The 6 parcels of Stewart's, not the 5. And the Colavita lease, they had asked for 10 years back in 2018, and it was not our standard protocol to do that then. We've since come around, and that lease was a 5+5 lease. So it was 5 years that expired on December 31st, 2023, and runs for another 5 years, expiring on December 31st, 2028. So that's one of the issues with this transfer of an acre from one lease to another, as we fold it into the Cultivita lease, the term of that, et cetera, et cetera. But that's minutia that we can deal with. But that's the status. The 2 leases that will be expiring at the end of this year, we all know that Doug Wright is in the process, or perhaps already has sold his 50 acres that he farms. He's been farming that parcel, leasing that parcel and farming it from us. So that will end at the end of this, end of 24. Our parcel, I know Shoreland has already expressed interest in farming that. And there's also interest in farming that from the Tanners, who we do not deal with now, but Doug Wright deals with. So he has broached them about it, and to my knowledge, we haven't had any conversations with them yet, and that's the status. So that Bridal Estates parcel is kind of in play. That's 39 1/3 acres. It is 100% cropland. There's no woods on that, and that's a parcel that we'll need to find a new tenant for starting in 25.
So Dennis, what do we need to do? So we need sort of meet immediately. That would be the Calavita and Stewart's lease on Leadham, the changes to those. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that what we need to do is sit down with Bob and understand how he wants that folded in to his lease. Let's face it, he's leasing this acre to plant Christmas trees, and he doesn't intend to touch it for the he said 7, 8, 9 years, whatever. I'd be surprised if he would want to lease it for 5 years, since that would be of no value to him. So I'm expecting, since I asked for it before, that they would ask for a 10-year lease, which kind of ripples into the fact that I don't know if it makes sense to have one lease on 1 acre and then have a static lease on the other 7 to the same party. So I think what it translates to is we sit down with Bob and talk about those terms, what he needs, what our interests are, what his interests are, and then fold all 8 acres then into a common lease with a common expiry date or maturity date, and I haven't had that conversation with Bob. I don't think, Sean, you have, to my knowledge. And that's what I think we should do before we, start drawing up any paperwork, is we have to talk first.
And we should, we're going to do at the end of this call, get together about what we want out of the lease too.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Okay.
So
Okay.
if you're looking for a motion, perhaps it is, to approve the discussion and negotiations with Bob, to renegotiate and roll together this 1 acre plus the existing lease into one new lease, not leaving anything off the table up to and including that this is a 10-year lease, the new lease.
And we wouldn't be approving that lease, but approving, I presume, Sean or Sean, you and me, I don't know, to have those discussions and negotiations, and then that lease would come back to the board.
Come up with
final
something
approval.
principle, I think. Yeah.
Why do we need a motion for that? Isn't that our responsibility as a board? And given we already passed the other motion that the 1 acre transfer was okay, out of default by the other motion, you have to negotiate the lease.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, we could
Keep
just
it
do
simple, guys.
it. I don't think, I don't think we need a motion, but thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
I
So
think-
Sean, you let me know if you want me involved. You want to talk to Bob? He's your contact. That's no pride here, just whatever works.
I'd like to do it with you, Dennis. You have a lot more familiarity with the prior leases. I'd love to continue this conversation with Bob, but I'd like to do it with you as well.
Okay, that's easy.
And
All right.
how about the Stewarts, since they're giving up, so their lease has changed as well?
I mean, in their case, we're revising the lease from let me just take a look here. We're revising the lease from 58.2 acres to 57.2 acres. The timing is the same, the rate's the same. That's a little simpler.
Okay.
So that I think can be done with just an addendum. Whereas Colavita, by definition, we kind of ripple into the whole lease renewal thing at this juncture because of the circumstance. He may say he doesn't want it, but I'm presuming what he might want, but let's hear from him.
Okay. And then one of you would contact Tim or Sam and just to say, here's the addendum to your lease. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean I can do that on the Leadham parcel. I'll pull the Word document of that lease and take a look at it and run it by a few of you, and we'll take it from there. It should be simple.
Okay.
We
Sounds
did the
good.
exact same thing when we carved out, I think it was 150 square feet from the or 250 square feet from the Shoreland farm lease to accommodate the beehives. We took a little chunk of land out of it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, same process.
Yep. All right. That should be simple. All right. No further discussion there. We can move on to a farmer request on Leadham. Sean, the driveway gate and tree limbing.
Yeah. So as part of our breakfast with Sam and Tim, we had asked them how the buffer maintenance was going. They were very satisfied with that, mentioned that on a couple of occasions. We asked if there was anything that we could do to help them. And when we did, Sam and Tim mentioned one issue. Well, they mentioned two issues they have. The one I'm bringing up now is on Leadham's farm down on Dolington, where they come in and out of the farm area with their equipment and their trucks. As you know, there's two, partial telephone poles with a chain going across. It's approximately 12 feet, 14 feet wide, with stone and a little bit of macadam. They asked if we could look into widening that so that they can actually get their trucks in, get it turned around, and pull back out onto Dolington. It's a bit of an issue. Number one, the way that it's facing. Number two, with how wet that area is, they don't really have any room to move. And asked if we could look into widening it. So I've gone out and measured it and looked at it. I mean, from my opinion, it doesn't look like an overly difficult job. There is a ditch there with a culvert pipe in it. So we would ultimately just need to get the ditch, cleared out, put in another piece of culvert pipe, and then have some modified and some stone put over the top that would help support their, triaxle trucks coming in and out. I've discussed with Dennis, because he heard the same request, if we could potentially, start with speaking to the township and have them come out and look at it with us and see what they think. I don't know exactly what type of equipment they have. I'm certain they have equipment that could at least help us do a portion of this job, if not all. But let's start with the township, ask them if there's, any help that we could get on this request, and then take it from there. If we can't, or a partial we can't, then we would, meet with someone who could give us an estimate on what it would cost to do something like this. But it does sound like a bit of a hardship on them getting in and out safely. And I can understand it when it's pretty difficult just doing it in a regular pickup truck, never mind the 18-wheeler and so on. So that's something to look into. The other one was Bob had reached out about some tree limbing. He showed it to Mike and I maybe a week ago, where he has a good number of trees that are overhanging his property and basically just shading the Christmas tree farm in a couple of areas. Tall trees. He and his son go out and put up a ladder and go up with a chainsaw and trim whatever they can safely from a ladder. But these branches are just outside of that. So the ask was if we could have some branches trimmed off. Personally, it looks like maybe like a half day's worth of work, but a good amount of branches that are leaning over and shading the Christmas tree farm pretty good. So, Mike and I said that, we would, certainly, talk about it, and perhaps it could be on our winter project for 2024, 2025, but probably not something that would get done in the immediate future, given that we've already filled all of our allotted time with Corcoran for this year. So those are just two items I wanted to bring up. And with Dennis, I'll kind of continue on this driveway gate for the stewards, and I'll certainly put down the tree limbing at the Christmas tree farm on the back of the property for something to discuss when we start talking about winter projects for next year.
Any discussion on that? Any thoughts?
The gate you're talking about, are you talking about, you said off of Dolington, are you talking about on the Leadham property?
On the Leadham property, Dan, where you and I went and put the camera up that one day.
That's what I thought you were talking about. Okay.
Yep. They're just asking for that to be extended.
Got it.
So is
Yes,
that
it's on that curve of Dolington.
Right on the curve. And it points you out at the curve.
Right, and the farm preservation sign that is kind of crooked and leaning, which we need to fix, is right there. And it's a legitimate concern. I think there's a safety issue pulling in and out of there on that curve. Cars do go way too fast on Dolington. If I were Sam or Tim, I'd be nervous as anything, trying to maneuver equipment in and out of there. So we need to look at that. It's not right.
Yeah, they're looking to be able to take off with just a little bit of speed when they come out of there, to be able to head out instead of going out. And Sam said it is pretty tricky to just keep the tires off of the neighbor's property at this point. So I certainly think it's something we can look into. And when I had Tim out there, we looked at it, and Tim said, listen, our request would be, Sean, if you could take it out this far, that'd be great. But if that's too expensive and you can just add on 8 feet, then anything you can get us really helps being able to get the truck out of here. And that's ultimately what we want to be able to do. So again, we'll take a look at it with the township, see what we can do. And if we can't do it with the township's help, then we'll get an estimate and see what it's going to cost. But it doesn't look like a real big job.
Yeah. Sean,
go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to give you a heads up, and I'm not sure exactly where I'm looking at a map of Dolington, obviously the farmland around there, but this area of Dolington's a state road, so any widening of access points onto Dolington may require a highway occupancy permit from the state. And if you're dealing with a culvert, if you're doing a culvert replacement, that I'm not saying it will, but oftentimes that requires a permit from the DEP to do that. So we'll just have to be compliant with all of that if and when it applies, just as a heads up.
And Dan, Derek Fuller would be familiar with all that once we put a request in, right?
Maybe not entirely. That's not necessarily his bailiwick. He should
Okay.
be, he may put that question to our township engineer just to clarify. Yeah, he gets it. He doesn't always know that's what I do for my day job. That's why he
Right.
often asks me about that stuff. So it's just we just want to make sure that dotting the i's, crossing the t's to keep
Sure.
everyone above board. Because this is also an area where we're looking at with all the flooding that we've had. This is part of that study area that we've looked at from the township perspective. So there may be he may have some ideas too that may help separately from that.
Okay, great. Thank
And
you.
if you type in 835 Dolington Road, it's across the street on the farm side then of that. But that'll give you the approximate location.
Oh, it's over there.
Yeah, and I think you were
Yeah.
Sean and Dennis were referring to that. So that's a really dangerous turnoff there for us, or for Tim and Sam too. So anything,
That's their only
Wait.
access to that field.
yeah, but
So
that's right?
when I type in 835 Dolington, it puts me near my neighborhood. I don't think near Heller Drive and all that. Is it 1835?
Oh, are you using 18940? Are you using
I knew
Newtown?
you were gonna say that. No, thank you. 18940, is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so while we're looking at that, Sean, I have you down for as an action to add tree limbing on Leadham to Corcoran's list. And then
Yeah.
also asking Derek, I guess that would be your first stop, to ask the township on widening the driveway on Leadham.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. I don't know, Dan, are you still kind of look at that? Or can we move on?
No, I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm not.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, so driveway, a similar situation, which has already been approved. I guess it's in process or finished,
Yep.
Dennis, on Clearview.
Yeah, at least as of about 3 or 4 days ago, the split rail fence is been installed at the running parallel to the driveway. I'll start over. Split rail fence in the shape of an L, running parallel to Woodside Road and the driveway, going into Clearview parcel, has been installed. Trying to cut down on trespassers going back into that parcel. There's two steel I-beam posts, 30, really 60 feet into the parcel, at the end of the split rail fence. The townships installed two posts. The gate is not yet there, but the project is proceeding. Stewarts are okay with it. Township's okay with it. The agreement was we're paying the out-of-pocket costs, the township does the labor. All of that, the fence and everything else is 100% on township property. But it's that township-owned driveway that gives access to the farm field. So that's our cooperation. So that's progressing. We're all in concurrence what will happen there.
Good. Okay. So next item is signs on a couple parcels. One is a replacement sign on Longshore for the Haupt Farm sign that's there now, that's deteriorating. We got a new sign, a double-sided sign from Shaw Signs in Doylestown, and I've made arrangements with Derek Fuller to go out and take a look at that, and we just have to touch base this week and look at that. And also, what Dennis had referred to, there's a bent post on the Leadham sign. It's just past that big curve where our driveway is on Leadham. There's a bent post on that sign, and I know we had made it a little bit bent, I guess, to make it visible as people rounded that curve, but I think it's much too bent at this point. So I'll show him that, and hopefully we can repair that, maybe replant it, or we have other posts as well. So we may have to use another post. So that's in process. And the next item is neighbors who are using our land or dumping on our properties. And there's several that Dennis and I have tried to make contact with neighbors on Heather Ridge, on the 1546 and 1500 Wexford Court. The other on Heather Ridge, I've been tried to make contact, 1475 Heather Ridge Drive, and on Farmview 1, 1630 Fairfield Road. We have been unable, and I know, Dennis, you had left leave behind notes to no avail. So what's our next steps there?
Well, the issue there is the landscapers. I think it's the same landscaper cutting lawns of 2 or 3, maybe even a fourth neighbor, all using the same contractor. Cutting past the property, the homeowner's line, well into our buffer area and treating it like their lawn. I reached one neighbor who couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more pleasant, very cooperative, said absolutely, we don't want to cross any lines. We're sorry. They were new neighbors, they had just moved in, so it was a chance to educate them on farmland preservation. But the others, I left a leave behind note and haven't been able to make contact. I think at this juncture, my thought is no one's cutting grass right now, so I was gonna wait till we come April or so and visit again. It's cold. It's not the best time to ask people to walk out into their backyard. I just thought we'll let that sleeping dog lie until the spring.
Okay.
Because I knocked on doors. Cars were home. People aren't answering doors. I'm not gonna fight it too hard at this time of year.
Yeah.
But we'll reach them in the spring.
Okay. And I think that's a good suggestion. I can do the same thing. Try another time before we call out, as I call him, the enforcer.
Yeah.
Mike.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Good suggestion. We'll do that. All right. And actually, one of the neighbors, to your point, Dennis, about having an interaction with a neighbor who was very helpful and understanding. One of the neighbors on Fairfield Road, I did get in touch with, and he said yes, he had thrown it out, and he called what he had thrown over the side biodegradable, and thought it was no problem to do that. But I said no, it is a problem. So he seemed agreeable, so we can go back. I can go back and check how he's doing.
Good.
All right, so we're to the point of other business.
Mike, just maybe one thing to table for next month. George and I have met about the project renaming farm parcels. So we have something to present. We don't need to do it tonight given the time, but perhaps we can table it for next month. Okay,
I'll put that down. Thank you.
And under other business, I would just provide a quick update. All 4 deer red tags are now distributed to rostered hunters for the Makefield Brook parcel, and 3 of the 5 tags that we have for Clearview are out with rostered hunters. And the other 9, we have 9 red tags for Leadham, and those have been delivered to BOMA, who takes responsibility for the Leadham property.
Dennis, you just reminded me, perfect place to add this. Maybe 2-3 weeks ago on a Sunday, I received a phone call from a Lower Makefield Township police officer introducing himself. Dan had gotten him in touch with me, but they had received a call about a hunter on Clearview, and from a neighbor. It sounds like the neighbor didn't know if hunting was allowed to be done there this time of year or not. Police went out anyway. There was no issue, but they reached out in hopes of getting a copy of our roster so that each of the supervisors and shift managers could have one. So I came home and gladly put one together and sent it off to them in 2 different formats, like an Excel format and then just a written up format, and said, if at any time you need anything, from us, please don't hesitate to reach out. So they have it, in case they receive any more calls like this, or they need to check on anyone. They have the license plates, they have hunting license numbers, they have it all.
Okay. Yeah. Share it all with them. That's, I think, almost an annual occasion. There's one neighbor there on, what is that, Upper Hill, North Hill, something Hill Drive, that borders Clearview, that she calls the police whenever she sees a hunter, and it's been going on for a long time, and it's it's just,
it sounded like that annual occurrence.
Yeah. I mean, it may be different, but there is a history there.
Yeah. Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want, because obviously the township has their own deer harvesting program with BOMA, that we contract with BOMA. I'm wondering, it would be great just from a success story, just to look at our numbers, to kind of see if we couldn't combine the numbers just to see how we're doing overall on deer harvesting throughout the township between farmland preservation and township properties, just so we could see how successful we're doing, if the numbers are up or down, where BOMA does all of ours, so there's some overlap there. But it would be interesting to see how we're doing. This year, probably kind of similar to what you were just talking about, Dennis. We did have a township property where there was some pretty big pushback during a meeting, so we ended up pulling that from the roster, for better or worse. But I would be interested to see how we're doing in total.
Yeah, I ask BOMA each year to give us a report of how. The only management we have of it is on the red tags, which is the agricultural harvesting program, agricultural damage harvesting program, which allows for the harvesting of does, of antlerless deer, only outside of regular deer season. And each hunter has to have a special red tag license that is numbered and identified by the Game Commission. We ask them for that. Unfortunately, their success has been pretty low. If they fill all 9 tags for that one parcel, we can get 9 more. And they've never filled the first 9. So trying to control deer with archery hunters is ambitious, let's just say, to say the least.
As an archer, I had 10 deer walk across my lawn this weekend. I've never seen that many at one time, all at once. But yeah, it's a program that has its justifications and has its uses. As you know, and we're not disagreeing. I would just be curious on the numbers overall, so we could see how we're doing. That's all.
Yeah, when we get them at the season will end ends in September, when the legitimate archery season begins. And that's when we'd get that information.
Okay. No, that would be great to see if
great.
And if you're interested in our numbers, we can hit, obviously those are public, but I can get those over to you too, just get a feel for it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other business? Going once, going twice. Alex, any public comment?
There is no online public comment.
All right, thank you. So we can move to a review of action items. George, what do you have? I have a list myself, so I'll check these off as you go. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
you
go
may have more than I do then, because I just don't have many. I think the major item is for Sean and Dennis to kind of work on the leases for Calavita's 1 acre addition and the addendum to Charlotte Farms, giving up the 1 acre, and work that through. We put the renaming of the parcels for the different farms to be put on the next agenda. And then the other item I have here is probably in the spring here coming up, initiate some conversations regarding expiring leases for Bridal Estates and Heather Ridge. So that would include me and Dennis for Bridal Estates, and I'm not sure who it is for Heather Ridge these days.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have that. That's a good one. Bridal and Heather Ridge. Okay. So I had that Dan G will send draft of newsletter right up to board. And I also had discuss the bomb, Dennis. Okay, you had that. So Sean, you're going to ask Public Works about the widening of the driveway on Leadham.
Yep.
We're also going to add, as I said, the tree limbing on Leadham to Corcoran's list.
Yep.
Mike's going to contact Derek Fuller regarding the 2 signs. Keep that going. Dennis is going to follow up with the Wexford Court neighbors. Mike is going to follow up with the Heather Ridge and Farmview neighbors who were dumping on our property.
Yeah, the only reason I didn't include that because I figure we're going to have another meeting between now and the time he's going to do that. So it's going to come up in the next meeting.
I will put that on the next agenda, so that'll roll to me. Yep, good point. And then Dennis to share deer harvest numbers with Dan G.
Right.
Okay. All right, good. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. And then, but before we do that, Alex, you'll put us, once we're adjourned, you'll put us into a separate room, non-public?
Yep, right when I end the stream, I'll move you guys over.
Okay, so motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Yeah.